Okay, good morning, everyone. So I welcome all the participants for this presentation on a review of national environment policies in India for sustainable development and environmental governance. So it is basically in continuation to the Block 3 Unit 1 presentation we heard last time. And I am fortunate that I am taking up this complete block together so that there is a continuation in what I have explained you earlier in the first presentation of unit 1. So if you can recall, in that unit we discussed what is the policy, what is the difference between a policy, an act, a law, or a regulation. So basically policy doesn't provide you a protocol, it provides you an outline, it provides you the principles which will be governing your acts and regulations. Okay, so basically this is a product of policy which we are discussing today. So after discussing what is policy, what led to development of national policies or international policies, what was the environment internationally, and so now we will be discussing what are the policies of India and how do they help us in sustainable development and environmental governance. And without these policies it will be very difficult to ensure that we are taking a path towards sustainable development. Okay, so this will be the outline of my presentation. I have already discussed a few objectives of our study today. What was the need for environment policy at national level? What is a brief history, how it developed, how it evolved over the years and over the ages, and what was a national policy tool for sustainable development? What is the policy statement of 1992? What is the national conservation strategy and policy statement which was developed in 1992? Then environment action program, objectives of national environment policy, principles of national environment policies, and action and strategies. And side by side, I'll be discussing how they help you in sustainable development and environmental governance. So basically, this was introduced, the National Environment Policy was introduced as a measure for Government of India to conserve, to upgrade, as well as protect the environment. So these are the three objectives. First is to conserve, then is to upgrade, and third is to protect from any kind of harm or any kind of development activities which is hecklessly taking place. Then in India, it is because India is original signatory to the Solomon Declaration of United Nations Conference that held in 1972. And the issue of protection of environment and sustainable development has been there in our policies from that time, from the time we became original signatory to this Declaration of Stockholm. So due to our being a party to this kind of declaration, we have incorporated all the issues related with environmental dimensions into our 5-year plans. So the first 5-year plan, which recognized the integration of environmental dimensions, was from 1968 to 73. So after that, when we developed our first 5-year plan of incorporating environmental dimensions, we studied that there has to be an independent body, an independent institutional system which can take care of all the environmental related functions. So a full-fledged Ministry of Environment and Forest evolved in 1985 to oversee all the functions related with environment at national level. So after this, because there was a department, now we are a signatory to an international declaration, we have incorporated all the activities which we could understand at that moment into our 5-year plan. So there came a need of comprehensive policy as well, so which can ensure that all the decision makers, all the policy makers, all the implementation agencies of different sectors, be it water, be it agriculture, groundwater, or related with health, human health, mother and child care. So all these departments, they have to be in tandem with sustainable development principles. So there came a need for comprehensive policy so that which can infuse a common approach for various sectoral issues, and which can give you fiscal, that is financial incentives if you are taking up some activity related with energy efficiency. For example, these days Bureau of Energy Efficiency always tells you to take up projects which have maximum energy efficiency and install all the products which have 5-star rating of power saving. Okay, so if there has not been an environmental policy at an national level, so all these departments won't be too much conscious about their initiatives and about the activities which can promote in their department for sustainable development. So this basically gives you 3 objectives to understand what is the need of environment policy, which I have already explained. Then what are the areas addressed by the environment policy, and to review and introspect all the environment policies for sustainable development and environment governance. Now to review and introspect at cursory level can take place with this presentation, and I can give you few examples. But to introspect it at a very deeper level, you have to read all the environment policies that are there. Okay, and I would suggest you should add another objective to this study, because if you want to pursue this environment law as a career in future, then also it's a very good option, because most of the times the people who are having LLB degree and who are pursuing as an advocate or as a law professional, they do not have so much knowledge about the nitty-gritties of environment management, and what are the different laws, what are the different rules, why a law has been made, what are the criteria for determining the concentration and standard of environment pollutant which are allowed as per law. So all these things can be understood in a better manner through an environment professional. And any environment professional can be a part of team of a law firm, so that any cases related with environment law or environment issues from an industry, from a corporate firm, can be tackled through people like you. So it is one of my suggestion. Rest it depends on your area of interest, because as a consultant accredited by Quality Council of India, I have been taking up such kind of studies through my consultancy firm in earlier years. So there have been many instances where litigations have been there, where letters for show cause have been issued to industries, and they have to give an explanation what kind of activity they were doing for degradation of environment, and how they are now taking up actions to prevent it in future, and why their industry should be allowed to be functional. So that can be another objectives that can be added. Then the need of the policy. So basically, as we have already studied policy in the last lecture, so I assume that from like till now you would have understood what are the basic needs. So this is very simple. So basically we need to conserve environment resources. So for that we need a path to tread on, and we need, for that path to tread on, we need some directions. So those directions are given by national environment policy, how to go about it, how to take up certain activities, what are the principles which will be guiding our path towards sustainable development. So we need to conserve environment resources, that is one of the need. Then to secure livelihoods, if there are most of the occupations and most of the business or industries, they are in one way or the other dependent on natural resources. So if there is a dearth of natural resource, if there is unavailability of raw material like air, water, soil, these are the basic raw materials, and all other resources, natural resources, they grow on them. Okay, so they are dependent upon the intricacies involved in the functioning of air, water, soil, these three elements or abiotic aspects. So we need to secure livelihoods. If there is no industry, if we cannot run industries, if we cannot do our occupation, then how our livelihood will be ensured? So again, it is for the well-being of all. If there is too much degradation, too much environment pollution, like the way we see in our rivers these days, most of the rivers are almost polluted, and they are more like a drain rather than a river now. So we cannot, our water quality is not ensured, and we all have installed ROs in our households, as well as in industries. Even for the domestic purposes, even for the industrial use, they have to treat water before using it for any activity. So that well-being can be ensured for our environment elements through this policy. Then how to obtain better livelihoods from the practice of conservation. One is to secure and then to obtain better livelihoods. Then contribution towards environment management. So we are international signatory. We have to contribute to prove it to our international partners and parties to the memorandum of international environment rules and regulations. Then again, we have to contribute as a nation to ensure that our future generations keep on deriving the benefits from our natural resources, as we have already done. Then there is a need for sustainable development in their specific context, and there's a formulation of necessary strategy for all sectors. So this all gives you on what are the different needs of environment policy. Then what are the different policies as per se? We have a national forest policy of 1988, the national conservation strategy and policy statement on environment and development 1992, the policy statement on abatement of pollution. So from 1988, we had realized as a nation that we have to take up all these national environment policies. So again, there are sectoral policies for agriculture sector, for population, for Department of Human Development and Population Control. Then national water policy is there for the water resources department, national water resources and groundwater resources department. So basically we have four policies which are for environment at large: national forest policy, national conservation strategy. Forest policy can also be considered as a sectoral policy for forest department, but because it helps in overall maintenance of environment in the country, it can also be considered for the environment management in totality. So how it evolved, this gives you a brief history of evolution of environment policies in our country. So during ancient India, now I had already taken up a lecture on socio-cultural beliefs in environment management. So if you have attended and seen that presentation, there we had discussed these aspects in detail. How are ancient scriptures and what are the different theories which evolved in ancient times, which all support for environment management. Okay, and how our socio-cultural beliefs are related and impacted by those theories and on or scriptures written in ancient time, we have already discussed. So again, you can if you cannot recall or if you haven't seen that presentation, please go through that, and then you will be able to appreciate this aspect in a better manner, that how our environment policies are ingrained in our culture through ancient times. Okay, so the Earth Shastra by Kautilya, written as early as between 321 and 300 BC, before Christ, contained provisions meant to regulate a number of aspects related to the environment. So the fifth pillar edict of Emperor Ashoka also contains such regulations. So it is surprisingly and yet surprisingly a positive movement which started in 321 and 300 BC. And during the British reign in India, then also we started implementing acts like Nuisance Bombay and Colaba Act, Indian Penal Code, Elephants Preservation Act, Indian Easements Act, Fisheries Act, Factories Act, Bengal Smoke Nuisance Act. Again, it was formulated in 1905. Then Bombay Smoke Nuisance Act. So these were all state regulated acts. Okay, then Wild Birds and Animal Protection Act in 1912. So we were, as a nation, we were quite conscious about environmental regulations and protection of environment. So we formulated these acts in early 80s. Okay. Then there is a brief history about environment policy, how it started. So National Council for Environment Policy and Planning came into picture in 1972, which was later developed as a full-fledged Ministry of Environment and Forest in 1985. Then Ministry of Environment and Forest realized that there has to be a complete setup of implementation agencies at state level as well as at the central level. So that's why CPCB and SPCB came into picture. That was after the National Law on Environment Protection Act of 1986. So then came the Environment Action Program, which was formulated in 1993 with the objectives of improving environmental services and integrating environmental considerations. This gave rise to National Environment Policy, which was given in 2006. So it was a long journey from 1972 to 2006, but now from 2006 we have a National Environment Policy. Okay. So what are the different antecedents to current environment policies and legislations? So the division of responsibility between states and the central authority was introduced by Government of India Act of 1935. So there has been a division of responsibility. Few of the aspects of environment are covered under the state list, few are covered under the central list, and few are covered in common list. Okay, so I'll be showing that also after this. So some of the earlier statutes which aimed at curbing air pollution included the Bengal Smoke Nuisance Act, which we have discussed. Then Elephants Preservation Act of 1879 and the Wild Birds and Animals Protection Act of 1912. So these were some of the earliest pieces of legislation. So after independence in 1947, Factories Act and River Board Act also came into picture. So these all give you tend to have a limited territorial reach. Okay. So if I have made a Factories Act, it will be only concerning with environment related issues in factories and how to curtail that and how to ensure that environment protection is there in factories under the Factories Act. So these were all limited with all were having limited territorial reach and sectoral impact. Okay. So we still had a requirement of acts which can cover all the aspects of environment at national level. Okay. So the environmental statutes in modern India also dated back to 19th century when Ramakrishnan in 1984 with laws such as Indian Forest Act came into picture. Then environment aspects such as air and water pollution and wildlife were also considered in these acts. Then in Shore Nuisance Act, we had authorized the collector of land revenue in Bombay to ensure that there is no nuisance at Bombay Harbor, because sea route was most internationally used route at those times. Okay, so for international travel and trade, all sea routes were used. So that's why there was more nuisance and more pollution, water pollution on seashores. So that's why this law came into picture. And then Oriental Gas Company Act of 1857 came, which ensured that there should be compensation to the people whose water resources have been fouled by the discharges of the company. Then Indian Easement Act of 1882 came into picture, which gave the property rights to riparian owners, because the from which the land has been taken, and there again has been unreasonable pollution by the upstream users to the downstream users, which were on the downstream side of the project implemented at any location. Okay, so this is the list of environment related subject and how they have been divided into at state level, at central level, at union level, and at which and in the concurrent list we have some subjects which can be considered both by the central and the state. Okay, so you can see that industries, regulation of development of oil fields, mineral mines, interstate rivers and river valleys, fishing, fisheries, beyond territorial waters. This was all considered in the union list. So basically, all the subjects which were considered in the union list were out of the were because they required monitoring at a state central level, because they have no physical dimensions, no physical boundaries. Those kind of subjects like oil fields, mineral oil resources, and interstate rivers, they are beyond the physical boundaries of any state. So those kind of subjects were taken up in union list. Then in state list, if you see, these are some of the subjects which are concerned with the development of a state per se, for the economic development or for the increase in GDP of a state. So, and they are constrained through their physical boundaries and physical dimensions in spatial aspect. Okay, so those subjects were considered by the state list, and there are few concurrent lists because they have to be there in state. They can be governed by the state. They can have physical boundaries, and sometimes they might go beyond the physical boundaries. So those kind of subjects are related, considered in the concurrent list, like forest, protection of wild animals and birds. So you have to take care of the local wild animals and birds also. And there are migratory birds which are coming from different countries and which are going to different states. So for that also you have to do protection. So it was added in concurrent list. Then economic and social planning, it is again a part of state development as well as central development. Then population control and family planning, this require initiatives at state level to control the population at local level. Then it also requires initiative at central level, so that there can be a nation wide campaign or nationwide operations which can control population and ensure family planning. So these subjects again, they are directly indirectly related with environment development and sustainable development, sorry, and environment protection. So these have been divided in these three lists. So then comes the subjects under Ministry of Environment and Forest, and it's a long list. And it is there are more than 200 laws and acts in our country. So I will like I have already studied how the each of our acts as compared to the international level of regulations and acts formulated so far. And during my initial years of career, when I started working in this field after completing my master's, so I wrote a paper also on this issue, and I realized that at that time itself that there is no dearth of environment law and regulation in our country, and all these acts and law are at par in their technicality, in the kind of international measures people are taking and international countries are taking at their environment protection platform. So they are at par with all the international requirements. However, there is dearth of funding for the implementation because of the lack of manpower, because of our system which is not concentrating or which is not focusing on implementation part. That is the reason why our protection is lacking and why there is degradation of environment in our country. That is the only reason. Apart from that, if you see, all the areas are covered and all different subjects are covered. So starting with first subject, environment and ecology, which includes environmental, coastal waters, mangroves, coral reefs, then environment research and development, environment health, environment impact assessment. So all these subjects are covered under Ministry of Environment and Forest. And I suggest all of you to kindly go to the website of Ministry of Environment and Forest and study what are the different reports that are available, which can be downloaded, and how there are different project activities which are taken up for each of these subjects. For example, if I see environment impact assessment, if you go to Ministry of Environment and Forest website, there is an independent, again, platform which you will be taken to from this website for the environment impact assessment. That is a Parivesh portal. Okay, so there is complete information about environment impact assessment. So if you want to become an expert in environment impact assessment, there are thousands and thousands of reports that are there, which can be downloaded, because they are all this data related with all these subjects is in public domain. Okay, so that is the kind of access you have to the resources, and to upgrade your knowledge, to upgrade yourself, and to make yourself as an expert in any of these fields. Okay, then you have also an advantage to communicate with these department. You can get email IDs, you can get contact information, and you can approach them. For example, like I know this group attending the presentation might have many senior people and might be having many freshers and people who are still looking for avenues in environment for future career options. So I'm discussing from that perspective. So if you are a senior person, you want to do some kind of research and you have data which you have gathered through years from your department, and which you think can be evaluated for some beneficial study in a particular sector, then all these departments can be approached. And if you want to gain knowledge for any of these subjects, how to go about consultancy in environment impact assessment, then again you have thousands and thousands of reports and data and filled up forms which you can go through, so that you can acquire the knowledge and information how the process of environment impact assessment takes place in our country. And again, you have information about Botanical Survey of India, botanical gardens, even what are the different kind of projects like Project Tiger and Project Elephant, which are taking care of wildlife conservation. So you can become part of any of these projects and any of these subjects in future through understanding the deeper nitty-gritties involved in their acts, in their implementation. And you can also study, there are different case studies, how if there is a case in any environment policy, or if there is a legal dimension to any environment policy, how it can be tackled. So that is another area which you can explore. So again, these are all the subjects. Even National Museum of Natural History, Biosphere Reserve programs, desert and desertification, and there is independent report on all of these subjects if you go to a Ministry of Environment and Forest website. So again, now we are coming to all the policies. How now we have studied how it evolved, what are the different acts, what are the different policies. So now we will take up each and every policy and understand its salient features, so that we can appreciate why the need has been fulfilled by this policy, why the need of conservation, why the need of securing livelihoods can be fulfilled by these policies. So it was National Environment Policy was the first initiative in strategy formulation for environment protection. Now, as I already told you, that there was a long journey from 1970s to 2006. So now again there has been a diagnosis of causative factors of land degradation. So national environment policy is very comprehensive in terms of attending each and every issue related with environment degradation. So there is no aspect which has been left out in national environment policy. So, and again, it has given emphasis on identifying relevant fiscal tariffs and sectoral policies. So again, we have to offer solutions also. So again, this is also governed by the policy that you have to adopt both science based as well as traditional and indigenous knowledge based practices. So there are many indigenous practices which are not documented in science based literature. Okay, but they are having beneficial impacts for the protection of environment. So definitely we should adopt those kind of practices as well. Then you have to implement pilot scale projects. Pilot scale demonstrations have to be there. For example, if I'm promoting any technology for wastewater use, or the latest technologies of MBBR is there, and many kind of bioremediation technologies are there, reed technology is there. So this policy advocates that you should take up some kind of pilot scale project and demonstrate the impact and effect of your technology. What are the positive impacts, what are the negative impacts, so that before it can be implemented at a centralized large scale level, you should be aware about the impacts and the benefits, negative and positive. So that can, when it gets multiplied at a larger level, we are able to tackle all those issues. Then large scale dissemination is again propagated. Then adoption of multi-stakeholder partnerships. There can be different kind of partnerships at national level and international level, then at local level. Then promotion of agroforestry, organic farming, environmentally sustainable cropping patterns, and even efficient irrigation techniques. So all these issues and even solutions are covered in our national environment policy. So the basic objective of this policy is, again, first, as we all know, we have to integrate environment considerations into our decision making levels. Okay, so that was the first requirement for the national level policy, and again this is the requirement of a national environment policy. Then prevention of pollution at source instead of end of pipe treatment. So these concepts, they are very much already implementing at international level. If you see EPA, Environment Protection Agency of US, and the kind of documentation they have for each kind of sector and environmental aspect, then you will be surprised that our abatement of pollution statement came into 1992, and there it was already taking all was already into picture even before 1972. Okay, so that's why we are still lagging. And if you see, there is a Kuznets curve is there. I'll be discussing that in further presentations after this unit. So in Kuznets curve, there is a clear mention that after a nation completes and fulfills its basic survival needs, then only it goes for the environment abatement or pollution abatement and environment protection. Because till the time you can't provide, you are fighting with poverty, you are fighting with providing education to your population, till that time there is no emphasis on environment pollution control, because there is no demand, there is no fiscal incentive, there is no subsidy available. So why would I invest in those kind of aspects when I don't even have enough to fulfill the basic needs of my population? So it has been observed through studies in developed nations that how industrialization took place, and when a better standard of living was attained, after that investment started in technologies for pollution abatement. And same is the case for our country. It is unfortunate, but That is the case, and it has been studied through environment economics and through various researches in developed nations. So again, that is the reason why prevention of pollution at source came into picture. So before we were doing end of pipe treatment, that after there is a complete supply chain has been fulfilled and all the products have been made, at the end of our production, what is the discharge which we are releasing, and we have to treat it before discharging into any natural resource. So that is end of pipe treatment. But if I take up a prevention of pollution strategy and ensure that at source itself I am not using any kind of chemical which can cause environment pollution, or if I can find a substitute to a chemical or to a product, like we have found now substitutes for CFCs in our air conditioning systems. So before that, what we were doing, we were causing greenhouse gas emissions, and then we were treating it. Now we are considering what is the source of pollution at the initial stage itself, at the first stage of supply chain, and how we can substitute that. And if there is no substitution, how I can ensure that it can be entrapped in my system itself rather than going out. Okay, so that's why now ZLD approach is there. Zero liquid discharge approach is also a part of this prevention of pollution at source only. Then we have encouraging, developing, and applying the best available practical technical solutions for pollution. This is again an objective. Then revision of norms. Now, there earlier the norms were that if I am giving some subjective norm that there should not be much pollution. So that much pollution should be measurable. And how it can be measured? It has to be a down mass based standards. Okay, so you have to give mass based standards that for every kilogram of my production, for every kilogram production of my pesticide, I will release only this milligram per liter of chemical in water, or for this much production, I will release only per microgram per meter cube of this much air pollution. So that has to be ensured through mass based standards, and that can be understood only by an environment professional. Okay, so why there are specific limits to encourage minimization of waste has to be there. Then we have to promote recycling and reuse of materials. Excuse me. Then assistance for adoption of clean technologies. So that is again one of the objectives. And for that assistance, CII came into picture. So for each of these objectives and fulfillment of these objectives, there are many different bodies acting in our countries, which are already promoting many national and international projects to ensure that all these objectives are fulfilled. So more you will be studying about these objectives, and more you will be dedicating focus on each of these objectives, more you will be realizing that activities are definitely taking place for fulfillment of each of these policy statements. Then there has to be an involvement of NGOs and public spirited individuals, because now they have given you a tool of public interest litigation. So that tool helped in involvement of public in decision making. Then again, public decision making is also there for public hearing. Okay, so there was no public hearing kind of option available earlier in environment impact assessment, but now in all major industrial activities which are having long-term impacts on any location, there they are required to have a public hearing. So that public hearing, I don't think many people attend, and that is their information about any public hearing also comes in your local newspaper. There is a law, there is a gazette notification that any project which is require public hearing in their environment impact assessment requirements, they have to do it, they have to conduct public hearing. So these kind of tools like public hearing, public interest litigation, so it had involved larger community into decision making for environment protection and abatement of pollution. And all this information is published periodically, and if you go to Ministry of Environment and Forest site, there are annual reports where information regarding each of these objectives is published annually, and they have to inform public what kind of initiatives were taken for fulfillment of each of these objectives. Okay. Then what is the role of national conservation strategy and policy in statement on environment and development? That is because the foundation for integration of these environment conditions were given in these policies. Okay, so how I am going to take up integration of environment consideration in construction industry, for example. So now earlier, no construction project required environment clearance. So they were doing it with their own will and fancy, whether they are required to take up any green area in their project, because their objective will be what? Their objective will be commercial, will be maximum commercial benefit. So they are going to take care of all the aspects which can give you, which can maximize their commercial gains, rather than going for the environment protection. But now if they are required to dedicate some area for landscaping, some area for green spaces, they have to ensure that their STP is there, if they are generating sewage from their occupants, and if they have to go for waste management. So earlier, all these issues were not considered for any builder, for any construction project. That is the simplest example I'm giving to you. So similarly, for mining activities, for oil drilling, so the kind of implications this policy is making on these sectors, that all the investors, they are taking care that they are going to ensure that regulations are implemented, and they have to abide by the objectives of national conservation strategy and policy. Okay, so it also gives you gives the government an outline of goal and projects they have to ensure for achieving sustainable lifestyle. So these are the aims of national conservation strategy, which I have discussed. So again, conservation of forest and wildlife, biodiversity, tree cover, meeting the requirements of rural and tribal population. So if you go through these policies like a theoretical compilation, then you will find it very boring. But if you read it or go through it while understanding where it gets, where what will be the implication of each and every policy, what is the meaning they want to decipher, what is the objective they want to fulfill from each of these policy, then you will be able to very much appreciate these national conservation strategy. And while you are doing other units, while you are studying other units, you will be able to interlink that yes, that policy was there, and that's why I'm studying this technology. That policy was there, that's the reason why people are taking up this kind of environment clearance related activity. And if environment clearance related activity is there, why a promoter is pushed to implement solid waste management. So all these things are very much linked together, and then again you can help in achieving economic efficiency by going through the fiscal incentives these policies are giving. For example, if somebody has to do rainwater harvesting. So earlier, when rainwater harvesting was introduced by Central Groundwater Board, they used to offer many subsidies, even up to 50,000 rupees assistance was given at many state levels and department levels for implementing rainwater harvesting scheme in their institution. So again, nowadays, if you see non-renewable and renewable energy departments, they are giving you subsidies for establishment of solar water heaters. So if our policy promotes it, if our policy is giving some kind of physical incentive, and we can implement those technologies for environment protection and pollution abatement, Why not go about it? But for that, you have to have the information. You have to have the complete detail about what kind of subsidies are in place at present. So you should understand and try to go through these policies from that perspective, and that will give you a larger benefit. So again, you have National Wasteland Board to guide and oversee the wasteland development program. And it also ensures people participating. And there are science and technology department, like Department of Science and Technology is there. If you propose any scientific research project, and if you want funding from Department of Science and Technology for future programs or research and development activities in these fields, then also they have many different sectors for implementing objectives of these policies. So if you correlate like this R&D I am proposing is related with that policy, and it will fulfill objective of this policy, that will give you a maximum benefit of ensuring that your project gets through and you get funding for that project. Then aims of national conservation strategy and policy, again, they help in promoting sustainable use, development of suitable agro silvipastoral techniques. Now if you see from all these all point wise, bullet wise, whatever points are discussed, they are tackling each and every environment abiotic aspect as well as biotic aspect. Now, if you see, land is an abiotic aspect, but we have this conservation strategy for land. So it starts with land use by classification, then zoning of land use, then control. Now, if you see each and every term which is being used in first point, for example, promoting sustainable use of land by classification. So for classification, they have different bodies. There are GIS techniques which are doing classification, which are identifying which kind of land can be used. Then zoning of land use. Now, zoning is there for earthquakes. Zoning is there for industries. Zoning is there for establishing SEZ areas, okay, special economic zones. Okay, so for that also, this this is again a very concise line. Okay, but if you go through each and every point in every bulleted information that is being shown on you in this slide, you will understand what is the information it is imbibing. Okay, so then you have micro level land use development programs. So protection of sustainable use of plant and animal genetic resources, that is also again a part of this national conservation strategy. So it is no aspect is left out if you consider and study it deeply. Then in water also, you have to promote sustainable use of water by ensuring equitable access, that so that there is access of quality drinking water to each and every citizen of our country. Then prevention of construction near water bodies, monitoring surface and groundwater quality. For example, these days, if you are establishing any landfill site or any waste treatment project also, then also you have to install piezometers, okay, in each direction of your project, so that if the percolation or the leachate which is coming out from your waste management site, this waste management site leachate should not pollute the underground water resources or the aquifers. Okay, so that is also ensured from our policy. Okay, and considering each and every aspect of this policy, we are having laws. That's why we are having more than 200 laws and regulations. So as a part of community, as an environment professional, if you want to fight for any kind of environmental issue in your in the area around you or in the society around you, you can definitely go about it if you have complete information about what kind of policies are there, what kind of rules and regulations are there through implications of those policies. Okay, Then for prevention and control of atmospheric pollution, including noise pollution, raising of green belts. Now, if you go to Central Pollution Control Board in East Delhi, they have a complete library. Okay, so there many half of the documents which are available in their library, they are distributed in public domain free of cost. But most of the people, we don't even know that such kind of facility is there, and that is being provided by Central Pollution Control Board. And there is a guideline on raising of green belts. Okay, so there are different series of documentation which are released by Central Pollution Control Board. Probe series is there, COIN series is there, NAC series, National Ambient Air Quality Standard series is there. So you should be aware what are the different kind of uh, literatures or what kind of tools are available for you to get maximum information about any aspect related with these policies. Then only you will be able to appreciate what is the benefit of this policy. Okay, and how you can use this policy for upgradation of your career aspects and prospects. Okay, then conservation of biodiversity through a network of protected areas, including biosphere reserves, marine reserves, national parks, sanctuaries. So if I am going to implement a project which is having a sanctuary or national park in this vicinity, nowadays I have to prepare a complete wildlife conservation plan has to be there before I get environment clearance for that project. So those kind of initiatives are again guided by our policies. So this is the aim of national conservation strategy. I think now we have already understood there has to be a complete rehabilitation of rural, poor, and tribals, protection of sustainable use of plant and animal genetic resources. And if while I'm going through these slides, and if you have any question or if you want to have a better understanding through a practical example of any of these points, please ask me at the end of this presentation during question and answer session. Okay. So there has to be a restriction on introduction of exotic species of animals without adequate investigation. That is also there. That's why whenever we propagate that there has to be an introduction of wildlife and plant species in an area, there is always a line. You have to you do not promote invasive species. Okay, and you will be utilizing only indigenous plant and animal species. That is always used, because in our policy there is restriction on introduction. So that's why there comes the act and rule. Okay, then you have to develop integrated pest management and nutrient supply system. You have to promote methods of sustainable farming. So again, if you see each and every sector, be it agriculture, be it water department, irrigation department, wildlife department, or industrial promotion department, all are interrelated with environment management. That is the reason why we can implement environment policy at national level, at state level, at local and regional level. Okay. Then Environment Action Program in 1983 also stated why there is importance of laying down priority areas. Okay. So control of industrial and related pollution with emphasis on reduction or management of waste, particularly hazardous waste. So this was introduced while laying down priority areas in 1993 in Environment Action Program. It also emphasized on strengthening of scientific understanding of environmental issues and establishing a structure of training at different levels. Okay, so orientation and creating environment awareness. There is again a program for environment related issues in Ministry of Environment and Forest. You will have complete YouTube videos are there for different kind of environment issues. Okay, so that will give you a complete understanding, the material, the quality, and the aspects which have been discussed on these videos. That will give you a complete picture. Okay, so of all different kind of environmental issues that are there in our country and how they can be tackled, and they are free of cost. That is also very good. So in all these policies, there are emphasis on prevention of pollution and conservation of natural resources. So it will help in Indian industry to compete in the international market. For example, if a pharma industry from India has to export any kind of pharma product to international market, they have to have all the national as well as international standards. So the WHO good housekeeping practices have to be implemented by those pharma industries. Otherwise, they cannot export their products in any country outside India. So these policies are not just important for prevention of pollution in our country, but also to ensure that we can take up trade and we can export our products to other countries. So only this is possible only when we abide by the laws of international environment statutes. Okay. So these are the objectives of National Environment Policy 2006 in brief. So basically we have already gone through all these in detail. Now for a brief check, you can go through this slide, that we have to protect and conserve critical ecological resources. You have to support livelihoods. You have to have intra-generational equity. So there are two kind of equities. One is intra-generational and one is intergenerational. That is in the third column. Now intra-generational is when there is within the generation itself. Okay, so within generation, if I see my generation, what are the challenges which I can face within my generation? I have to ensure that different sections of society get equitable access to resources. I have to ensure that poor communities and rich communities within my generation get equitable distribution of resources. So if the marginalized group or the impoverished group or the SC/ST group or the tribal people which have been left out as minorities, so they also get secured access to national resources. This is called intra-generation. Now intergeneration, that from my generation to next generation. So it should be equitable distribution of resources between two different generations, in present and future generation. In my forefathers should have ensured that the pollution abatement should have started in their era, and it should have continued till now, so that we could have got access to better air quality and better river water. But it has not been the case. But now we have to ensure that future generations do get better air quality, and that can be ensured through intergenerational equity. Then we have integration of environmental concerns in economic and social development. So at present, all the economic and social development projects, they do integrate environment concerns. There has to have an efficiency in environmental resource use. So the specific demand for any natural resource should be reduced. So the per unit of economic output must ensure it is at the least cost of environmental resources. Okay, so that's why there came into picture the environment audit, okay, or the form 5. So every, like financial audit, every industry has to fulfill, and a form 5 is there in environment audit report, which has to be submitted by every industry at the end of the financial year. And in that form 5, you have to give clear picture about what is the quantity of pollutant which is being generated from your industry. For example, the water used and wastewater released, the water, the air pollution control equipments which are being installed, and the sources of air pollution, and how you are abating that air pollution. That has to be given. Then what kind of noise pollution sources are there, what kind of power consumption is there, what is the requirement of DG sets, do you are having stack height which is appropriate for monitoring, you are having portholes in your stack for regular monitoring. So all these things are already in place, and they are being implemented for industries who do care about their environment. environment contribution and who do care about sustainable development, because without sustainable development, even their industry cannot run. They will be given a show cause notice by Central Pollution Control Board, and they can have even imprisonment for causing environment pollution. So if one case is there of imprisonment of one industrialist, all other 100 industrialists, they do get alarmed, and they do start taking care of the environmental issues. So I have seen these in my practical experience, and it does happen. It is not at that level, because the country, the kind of population, the kind of density of industries which we are having, as compared to the manpower in Central Pollution Control Board, or as compared to the manpower at state level implementation agency, is there is much disparity. Okay, so that's why we are not able to implement it at that level. But there are examples, there are positive signs that all these policies are being implemented and studies are being taken up. Okay. Then, and for environmental governance and for enhancement of resources of environmental conservation. So again, these are the broad objectives of environment policy. So the principles of national environment policy to guide the activities of different actors is there. So these are again, starting from human beings are at the center of sustainable development concerns. So this is the first principle. Then right to development is the second principle, which again, as we have discussed, we have to have equitable right to development and equitable right to meet our environmental needs for present and future generations. Then environment protection has to be there, an integral part of the development. That's why came EIA, environment impact assessment, came into picture, environment audit came into picture, energy audit is now, even the institutions are now coming to me. I've seen many colleges and universities, as per their national accreditation, for as an educational institution or educational body, they have to submit environment audit report annually, and it does not require form 5 as such, but there has to be a report. So at least all the institutions are now aware that even we can cause pollution, even we can generate pollution, and we need to submit an environment audit report at the end of the financial year. So we have to ensure that year round we are not causing any pollution. So if an institution which is not involved in any kind of mass scale production, or which is not kind of any extensive use of natural resources, if that if at institutional level, if schools and colleges level, they require environment audit, so you can imagine that definitely there is a positive way to go. And from an environment professional point of view, you will be having those kind of consultancy requirement in future. So you have to upgrade yourself, you have to understand all these issues to ensure that you can play your part in future, and you can even earn from this environment protection platform. You can develop this opportunity as a career perspective future. Okay. So then there is a precautionary approach. You have to ensure that even before pollution is caused, you cannot say that, okay, I was not aware about my activity, I was not aware about the pollution it is going to cause. So there has a precautionary approach right from the start of design of your project. You have to ensure that there is no irreversible damage to the environment resources, and you have to ensure scientific data, primary data should be there, secondary data should be collected, and you should ensure that all your project activities are identified right at the start of your project, so that whatever pollution you are going to cause in future, you have to have a plan for mitigation of those pollution causing activities of future. So that is done before the start of the project. That is again EIE also helps in that precautionary approach. Then economic efficiency has to be there. Now if you are going to achieve environment or ecological efficiency, all the automatically economic efficiency will be there, because now everything is related with your fiscal incentives, taxes, audits. So economic efficiency is synonym for ecological efficiency these days, considering the impact lack of ecological efficiency can cause. For example, if your ecological efficiency or your environment related approach is very lenient, or you are not taking off your environmental aspects, so your company will definitely get a show cause notice, and definitely it has to close down, and then your business and your profitability or your any kind of economic efficiency will be at loss. Okay, so entities with incomparable values have to be taken care of. So now, for example, significant risk to environment, health and life, and environment related life support systems, they have to be taken care of. So we have already discussed the equity, legal liability, and you have a public trust doctrine is there, that state is not an absolute power. So that's why strategic national interest and involvement of public has been there through public interest litigation, through public hearings. Okay, and through availability of all the information related with environmental issues on public portal. For example, if it is EIA, then also everything is available. For if it is any scientific project related with any environment related issue implemented by Ministry of Environment and Forest, then also it is available in public domain. Then decentralization. So all the powers have to be transferred from central authority to state and local authority. That's why state level environment impact assessment authorities and bodies came into picture. That's why groundwater level is also now being ensured through state level bodies. That through, for example, in Punjab, we have now Punjab Water Regulatory Agency. So similar agencies and similar regulatory authorities for their state level natural resources are being implemented. Then integration, environmental standard setting, that is also a principle. Preventive action, we have already discussed. On environmental offsetting, we have already discussed. So these are the actions and strategies of NEP as per governance of your objectives and aims and policy implications. So again, action and strategies cover all the state and central level action plans are there. Every state is having an action plan for management of its water resources. Even for climate change, state level action plans are there. Okay, and I have been a party to many of such state level meetings, so I can tell you that these actions are actually taking place, slow and steady though, but they are in place. Okay, so if we see regulatory informs now in subsequent lectures after this, we'll be discussing all the regulatory reforms in detail. So that's why in this presentation I have given just an overview, what are the regulatory reforms which are result of environment policies. For example, environment impact assessment is there, then clustering of industries and related development. Now we have special economic zones are there, so that the industries which are related with the specific industry can be clustered together at a particular location, and all environment management infrastructure like air pollution control devices or central effluent treatment plant, where effluent from all the different independent industries can be treated at a centralized treatment facility for that special economic zone. So all these things are in action and which are governed by the regulatory reforms. Again, we have diversion of dense natural forest and areas of high endemism of genetic resources that for non-forest purposes. So all these activities are again governed by legislation, and most of the times nowadays diversion of these dense natural forests is not allowed. Okay, and coastal regulation zone and integrated coastal zone management has been made more comprehensive, and there are strong scientific data requirements for before we take up any kind of activities in these areas. You have to generate a lot of primary data to ensure and to emphasize that your project is not going to make any negative impact. So again, environmentally sensitive zones identified in the country having environmental entities with incomparable values. For example, the biodiversity which I am having in my sensitive zone cannot be calculated in monetary terms, and it is not a tangible asset which can be calculated. So it is having an incomparable value, and it requires special conservation efforts. So I'll be preparing a special wildlife management plan if I am going to implement any project activities in the even in the vicinity, not inside the sensitive zone, even in the vicinity. So every now earlier there was a clear description that within 5 kilometers or within 10 kilometers you cannot do any activity. But now for every activity, for every sensitive zone, for example in Sukna Lake, or for example any biodiversity area, Nilgiri biodiversity area, so they have given an buffer core zone and a buffer zone. So there are clear dimensions, like up to which 3 kilometer there will be a core zone, and up to 4.5 kilometer there will be a buffer zone, and what are the different areas which are falling in the core zone and buffer zone. So for any sensitive zone, there is different notification that is available on the Ministry of Environment and Forest. So that has to be again taken care of. Then development and promotion of standardized environmental accounting practices. So this is a new thing which I think most of you must not be aware, that there has to be an environmental accounting practice, the way I was explaining environment audit. And there has to be statutory financial statement for large industrial enterprises. There you have to ensure that the EMP, environment protection plan, which you had given in at the start of your project, in their environment protection environment mitigation plan, you have to give clear cut cost. What will be the establishment cost, what will be the running cost, what will be the recurring cost, so that the budgeting can be ensured, and accordingly as per the budget how much activity has been done in that activity. Again, your CSR, corporate social responsibility, or corporate environment responsibility aspects will be covered under this. So basically we have seen that we are enhancing and conserving environmental resources in all the aspects: biodiversity conservation, conservation of fragile ecosystem, enhancing and conserving environmental resources, desert ecosystem, promotion of traditional ecological knowledge. So all these aspects are again covered, and you can go through. I have already explained most of them, and you can again go through them. And if you find any point which you are not able to understand, because this is all very theoretical, until and unless you want to understand them in a scientific manner, a technical manner, and then you want to dedicate any project activity related with that, and if you study those project related activity, then only you will be able to appreciate the technical aspect of each of these points. So that's why I'm telling you again and again to go through each and every points, like how do you denotify bamboo and similar other species as forest species under the Forest Conservation Act. So earlier under the Forest Conservation Act, they had notified bamboo and other similar species as forest species. So then there was not a cultivation of these species outside the notified area. So that's why the people who were dependent upon bamboo related produces were not able to utilize these resources. So they denotified bamboo and similar other species so that the people can get benefit. That was a point related with securing livelihoods. Okay, so from those principles came some actions, and then from those actions they have again notified and made some strategies to ensure that these forest and wildlife resources are protected. Similarly, in wildlife conservation, there has been a strengthening of measure and capacities for captive breeding. For example, these zoos which are having in which we are having at local level, so they are basically doing captive breeding, and then they, if there is the population increases, then they release it into a wildlife of endangered species. Okay. Then enhancing and conserving the environmental resources. So the Patent Act was revised because of this national environmental resource of land that was required. So this act ensures that you have to disclose source and geographical origin of biological material used in an invention. So before applying patents, you have to disclose the source of that. Earlier, that was not the case. Earlier, anybody can utilize any medicinal plant, any organic or geographical or biological material originating at a geographical location without disclosing it. So these are some of the revisions in Patent Act as well for conserving environment resources. Okay. Then freshwater resource conservation is there. How glaciers, how river valley projects, how power projects, how your river flows have to be researched and have to be ensured that no impacts of climate change are being caused. So these are again a complete new arena of scientific development, and many research and development projects have already been implemented by Department of Science and Technology in these areas. Then for efficient use of groundwater, again for groundwater, we are emphasizing optimal utilization of fertilizers, pesticides, and insecticides, so that the more minimum leachate is going to the groundwater and minimum pollution is being caused to the groundwater through the flow of groundwater downstreams. And then there is the impact on wetland should be reduced. For example, if you go to any wetland area, and I had an opportunity to work in Keshopur wetland in Gurdaspur. So there the community which is living in those wetlands, they were using extensive pesticides and chemical treatment methods, so that the pollution, the wetland was completely covered with dead mass of algae due to eutrophication, because when nitrates and phosphates increase in concentration in a water body, these algae and other plant materials start to dominate them, and over a period of time, after 1 or 2 years or after, it becomes almost a dead body, because there is so much plantation that this if you have studied from ecological study point of view also, then these water resources get converted into a wetland and then to a land. Okay, so we have to stop on overutilization of these fertilizers, so that, and we have to give information to the local community. We have to make them ensure that they utilize sustainable agricultural practices, so that the water level and the wetland is conserved. Because if wetland is not conserved in that area, then whole ecology will be disturbed, because it used to get visited by more than 80,000 migratory birds every year. So 80,000 migratory birds are coming for nesting and breeding in those areas during the months of December to February. And the whole ecology of the system and even the tourism in that area was dependent upon visits of these migratory birds. So if those migratory birds are not going to come there, then the wildlife that is being supported by those migratory birds will not be there. Then even the whole ecology of that system will get disturbed, and it will no longer be having any economic and environment benefits due to the unique environmental resources it is having. So all these issues again have to be considered while promoting efficient use of groundwater. Then conservation of mountain ecosystem is also implicated in our national environment policy. Then environmental standards, management systems, certifications, and indicators. So again, there is a complete series of guidelines by Central Pollution Control Board or National Ambient Air Standards, emission standards from various industries, even for every kind of specific industry. For example, if it is a steel industry, it's a pharma industry, it's a foundry industry. So for every kind of industry, they have a specific document which is giving complete description of class of activities as well as the emission standards. And even the ISO 14000 certification is required for any industry who wants to sell their products abroad or export and import their products. So ISO 9000 is quality related standard, and ISO 14000 is an environment management system and documentation of all environment related activities in an industry, including availability of monitoring data and infrastructure and network for monitoring ambient environment quality. Then nowadays you have online emission standard system. Okay, so any new industry which is coming up, it is required to have an online emission standard. In that online emission standard emission monitoring system, you need to monitor your stack continuously and regularly, and the data will be directly transferred to the local pollution control body or the local regional center of the pollution control board in your area. So they can directly keep on monitoring what kind of emissions are being released through your stack. Okay. Now, then we have requirement of clean technologies and innovation, that you need to keep up adopting clean technology. So, for example, in steel industry, there was earlier there was coal-based system of combustion. Now they are electric arc furnace has been introduced. So after introduction of electric arc furnace, the kind of pollution that was being released earlier in the steel industry has reduced dramatically. Okay, so all these technologies are again propagated through CII also. So Confederation of Indian Industry, they have regional offices in every state and every significant industrial area. So there they are cooperating and advancing research and development of clean technology and evaluating these technologies to ensure that there is database of such technologies and dissemination of such technologies there at national level. Okay, then environment awareness, education and information. Now for this also there are national level programs like INVASE is there from Ministry of Environment and Forest, where environmental information system is being developed through state many level of INVASE centers. So there are INVASE centers for Panchayati Raj, there are INVASE centers for medicinal plants, for bird information, ornithology. There is Rishi Valley Institute is there. So there are many different institutions in our country which are experts in their area, and they have been given responsibility of generating environmental awareness, education and information in those areas related with environment. Okay. So then there is partnership and stakeholder involvement, and many kind of like NGOs are working for the protection of environment, and community-based organizations are there. Even there are local level chums are there. For example, this is one of the concept which has been introduced in Punjab, where local level community is engaging itself in protection of environmental resources. Now, like you have seen, Brish Bachao Andolan have been taken up in many areas where deforestation was taking up at a mass level. So all these community-based organizations and voluntary organizations, now you must have seen many of the community-based organizations, even the individuals who are working, who are giving exemplary contributions in environment are given, are awarded at national level. Okay. So recently you must have seen that national level awards were given to many environment volunteers. Okay. Then capacity building should be done at institutional levels, and there are funds which are being provided for capacity building at institutional levels. And again, these activities are covered in your CSR, corporate social responsibility. Then research and development funds are available from Ministry of Environment, Forest, DST is there. Then in water also, groundwater development also, Central Groundwater Board is giving many fundings. Then international cooperation, all ADB related, World Bank, Asian Development Bank, JICA, and even Canadian development projects. So all Danish, Danida, Danish, even GTZ, German Technical Corporation, they all are implementing many multilateral instruments and bilateral cooperation programs in our country. So basically, environment policy and federalism in India, we have a good regulatory regime for environmental protection, but it has contrasting implications in terms of formulation and implementation that we have already discussed. Now we have elaborate statutes and regulations. We have almost every conceivable area, from hazardous waste to forest to wildlife to introduction of invasive species or protection of wetlands. Everything is being covered. So there is division of environment policy making between national, state, and local governments. This is the concluding part of our policy and federalism. I know it has been, the presentation has been long because these policies are too much, and I did not wanted to skip any of these policies through considering constraint of time. So I hope you are patient enough, and I'm going to conclude in within next 2-3 minutes. So we have to undertake consultations every 3 years with groups of diverse stakeholders, researchers. And in the third of the 3-year review, we have to undertake a more comprehensive examination of scientific and policy understanding. So a new national environment policy will be the outcome of all these studies of consultations and comprehensive examinations, which are taken every 3 years. And while coordination and review mechanisms, we are taking up a formal and periodic high-level review of implementation. Okay, so national environment policy, therefore, outlines a significant number of new and continuing initiatives. So whatever different studies are being taken up, we are identifying many diverse actors in our in a coordinated manner who are taking actions in our environment and in society, and which are those stimulated by many public agencies, but this is taking place. So these are the references you can consider. Thank you. So we should all conclude that we all should strive to build a society where environment needs no protection. So if we all are concerned enough about our environment, it will not require protection from anyone. Okay. Thank you so much. And if you please have any questions, put them through so that I can give you an explanation.